I'd like to call the Gurnee Budget Workshop #1 for fiscal year 2019-2020 to order. Roll call, please, Andy.
Jacobs.
Present.
Ross.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
Balmas.
Present.
Hood.
Here.
Thorstensen.
Here.
6 present.
All right, it's our big night, our biggest night of the year, longest night of the year, where our department heads get to make the presentation to us about our budget. I know everybody had a chance to read the book. The budget book made me very happy reading it and seeing all of our accomplishments the past year. And you all have had your one-on-ones with staff, so this is primarily for the department heads. So Patrick,
Sure.
take it away.
So a lot of what you see tonight, you've already saw in the one-on-ones. Last the department heads present their individual budgets, so we'll get rolling here. I'll start off, and then we'll go to Brian with some numbers, and then department heads, and then wrap it up with some of the smaller funds and the capital funds. So agenda for tonight, just review the financial planning process, and then kind of hit these sections in the budget book. Most of the information is in 1, 5, 6, and 7 as relates to the plan for the upcoming year. Just a reminder on the financial reporting process. So earlier in December, we got the multi-year financial forecast and capital plan in front of you. Those two lead into the annual budget. Brian's in front of you on a regular basis with the quarterly status reports. And then at the end of the fiscal year, or when that concludes, obviously have our audit conducted, make sure all the numbers jive. So this is just the timeline of that. So like I said, couple of presentations in December. We've got our budget workshop tonight. If we need a second one, we'll plan on March 18th for that. Hoping to have the budget in front of the village board for the public hearing and consideration on April 1st, and then fiscal year starts on May 1. The budget priorities, they align with the strategic plan that we conducted in 2015, so obviously everyone's aware of our mission of engage, preserve, and advance, and then we have our 5 key performance areas that we covered in the transmittal letter and tied initiatives throughout the year to those 5 areas. So as we talked about in the one-on-ones, as we were putting the budget together, the theme that kind of rose to the surface was investing in the future. As it relates to the surplus transfer, we have $1.3 million of surplus from this year, general fund surplus, so we're planning on transferring to capital with another $200,000 of water and sewer. Those will both fund infrastructure improvements in fiscal year 1920. On January 28th, we approved the IGA with the county for the improvements at Hunt Club and Grand, so that's about $370,000 that we'll be participating to make improvements out there to some of our main thoroughfares at that intersection. The Knowles Road water tower, everybody knows about, $6.5 million project, 2 million gallon tower. The foundation's poured. We didn't get as much done this fiscal year as we thought we were going to at this point, so that has pushed off some of the expenses into next year that we'll see later on. But the final completion date for that is April 2020. So we should have it in service, hopefully, by the end of this calendar year. And then, like I said, the final completion date, April 2020, is what the contracts read. So public safety, you're also aware of the 6 firefighters, paramedics that we were able to bring on board through the SAFER grant that the fire department received. That's grant covers 75% years 1 and 2, 35% year 3. After that, it's all on us. We've got 4 lined up to be sworn in on March 11th, and then continuing to work on the final 2 to get them in here. That personnel improvement leads into Fire Station 3, so we've got the equipment in place, getting the personnel shored up. A portion of the land has been secured, took care of that at the last board meeting, so that allows us to move forward and continue to bring that project to fruition, so we've got some money in the budget for that. Communications, this summer we'll be coming up on 2 years that we've been partnered with Zion for a consolidated dispatch center. Brought a number of communications operators on board when we made that transition and combined those 2 centers, have been working through it over the past year and a half, and it's got to the point that we realize we need an extra body in there. So there is an additional communications operator full-time in the budget, as well as a bump in some part-time hours. The EMD technology, we've also talked about this. Right now, they use hard copy printed booklets to go through to assist with emergency medical dispatch. It's really an antiquated system. We're looking to move to a software-based system that'll be better for both the dispatchers and the individuals on the phone receiving the assistance. One of the items that came out of the strategic plan related to funding pensions, very conservative. To that end, we adopted a pension funding policy in 2016. And when we look at our contribution every year, we look at the actuarial assumptions as well as the fund performance, and then to be conservative, fund on whichever scenario is higher. So we've been able to do that last year. This will be the second year that we'll move forward with that practice. The fund balances, general fund, $26.4 million, 62% of 1920 expenditures, so it's well above the 35% requirement. Also, other funds have the appropriate and good balances in them. Funds like MFT, we spend that down because that funding is restricted for what we can use for. As we talked about in the one-on-ones, the capital fund, we'd like to see that fund balance a little higher. Dips down to about 720,000, so we'll work on bringing that up to around $1 million here over the next couple of years. So money in for East Grand enhancements. We've got the final leg of the plantings once they get 132 and 41 all taken care of, as well as some money for the implementation of a quiet zone. The Granville Railroad crossing is our only at-grade crossing in town, so when the trains come through there, they have to lay on their horns. We've heard complaints from the neighborhood about that. Engineering division actually applied for a grant and received it. So the signal improvements that need to be conducted out there, a lot of that will be covered via grant. There may be some road work that needs to be done as far as some concrete medians and stuff, as well as working with the property owner to the north side there for their entrance that we may be on the hook for, but the majority of the improvements really come down to the signals and will be covered by that grant. And then economic development participation, we've got the big three in town that we partner with and have current economic development agreements with. This allows them to remain attractive, provide attractions and shopping that visitors are looking for, which in turn allows us to continue to operate on those visitor dollars versus relying on our residents to shoulder that tax burden. Some of the budget factors, the sales tax has been really strong throughout this fiscal year. The first 2 months we're down a little bit, and ever since then we've been up between 4 and 5% every month. I think we had $16.8 million in the budget for sales tax. We're looking to end around 17.5. So we backed off next year a little bit from that year end. We should be getting the March payment here pretty soon, the next week or so. That's the December shopping, so that's usually the one that kind of makes or breaks us, but leading up into that, as I said, we've been up 4 or 5% every single month. So we'll see what March looks like, and as we go through and adjust numbers for the final budget, if we need to pull down that next year number a little bit, because this year has been very strong compared to prior years, and that makes me a little nervous as far as next year's numbers. So we'll see where that ends up. The Supreme Court decision came down requiring online retailers to submit use tax, so we're seeing a nice bump in that revenue number, up about 13%. It's a start. It doesn't include our home rule percentages, and it's also distributed on a per capita basis, so really no direct correlation to the shopping, our strong shopping base in town, but like I said, it's a start. Amusement and hotel tax, as you know, we bumped each of those up last year by a percent to continue to rely on that visitor spending, and also with that set aside the $300,000 for the economic development reserve. So that was in this current year's budget. Looks like we're going to spend about $50,000 of that. We were able to put $300,000 in next year. If we don't spend that money, it gets set aside. So right now we got $250 set aside, another $300 in next year in case something comes along that piques the village board's interest that's looking for some participation. So we have some of that seed money there. The Great Wolf rebate, we also talked about this on the one-on-ones. There's some variances between what we had in the budget and year-end estimates and then next year's numbers. When Great Wolf came in, we didn't know how they were going to perform, so we just basically maxed that out as far as our exposure. Now that they've been up and running, we're able to adjust those numbers appropriately. Whatever comes down on the revenue side also comes down on the expense side because they're not getting that back on the rebate. So it's a wash. As a reminder, that's set up that we get paid first, so we get the first $550, and then everything else after that gets rebated. That was initially a 20-year deal, 20 years or $22 million. Great Wolf came in about the middle of that, so we've still got about 10 years left on that agreement, so unless they hit the $22 million before that. Safer grant we talked about, that's the 6 firefighters, so there's $500,000 on the revenue side for that. And then the IEPA loan, as I talked about before, that's really a timing issue. Didn't get as much done as we thought this year, so we didn't draw on the loan as much as we thought, so that those numbers got pushed off into next year. The result of the spending plan this year, 19th year with no property tax, so 19th year in a row. As you remember, back in 2000, we traded the property tax for a 0.5% home rule sales tax. So like I said before, it keeps the burden off our residents. We continue to rely on people coming to town and spending money. Continue to partner with the Mills, Great Wolf, Six Flags on our economic development participation and that $300,000 in case something else pops up. The capital plan is strong, largest in the village's history, $4.9 million. We've got 6.6 in for water and sewer, $5 million for transportation, 1.8 on vehicles, 1.2 on buildings, and a little bit on stormwater. We've made really good progress since implementing the additional 0.5% home rule sales tax, but we are still playing catch up. As I said before, everything aligns with the strategic plan. The non-public safety personnel levels are flat. We didn't add any full-time or part-time non-public safety personnel. There's, I think, 2 interns in there that are just seasonal summer interns. But otherwise, any changes in headcount are all related to public safety. And then, as I stated before, general fund balance, extremely strong, as well as the fund balances in our other funds in the village. Now Brian's going to get in some numbers.
So with that, yeah, we'll move into section 5 of the document here. We'll look at numbers on an all funds basis, so everything combined, and then we'll get into general fund and then specific divisions. We'll let other folks talk here for a little bit. So on an all funds basis, $77 million in revenue, $73 million in expenses. Budget is balanced without the use of reserves for operations. We do have some use of reserves for capital that was funded in previous years. Small budget surplus in the general fund. For the final budget, this will actually come down after we made some adjustments for salt. That was snowing as we were putting the budget together, so we had to adjust that right away. And then we got some final MICA numbers in not too long ago. Plan drawdowns, MFT. If you recall last year, we allow these funds to accrue and use them every other year because of the extensive paperwork that's required to use these funds. Impact fee fund, we've been slowly transferring $200,000, we did $400,000 one year out of this fund to help offset sidewalk and stormwater program. So that's that transfer. And then, as Pat mentioned earlier, we had that $1.3 million surplus transfer to the capital fund at the end of this year. We're spending that next year, plus a little bit more. So, in the water and sewer fund, we have a $633,000 deficit budgeted. After some adjustments and the final JAWA rate, that's actually around $500,000. That's in line with our long-term plan to fund capital in capital infrastructure in the water and sewer fund until we get that relief from the JAWA rate. Then we can stop using fund balance there, just drawing that down a little bit. Looking at revenues specifically here, up $364,000. Or about 0.5%. We break those down into 8 categories. Major revenues are primarily general fund taxes, comprise about 45.7% of all revenues. The other remaining taxes make up about 2.3%. And this is like road and bridge, franchise taxes, and resort taxes. Licenses and permits, about 0.7% of all revenues. Business liquor licenses and connection fees here. Intergovernmental revenue, 3.2%. This is the reimbursement from the joint ETSB with Zion, MFT, and the SAFER grant proceeds here. Charges for service makes up about almost 21%. Obviously, the largest portion of this is the water and sewer charges, along with the fire contract with Warren Waukegan and our Zion contract for dispatch services. Fines and forfeitures, about 2.7%. Here's where we see red light camera revenue, and then police and code enforcement fines. Investments and contributions, third largest category, 16.3% overall. This includes the village's pension obligations, interest income in the pension funds and on the village side. And then finally, the last category here, other sources, about 8.2% of the budget. This includes the reimbursement from the IEPA loan and any the revenue side of any internal transfers here. So we'll get into what the difference is in all these categories once we get into the funds. So I'll save that for those slides. Looking a little deeper at that major revenues category, this is the first year we split that out in the budget like we do with our quarterly report. So thought it'd be important to see exactly what's in there. Obviously, sales tax and home rule sales tax are the biggest chunks of that, and we pay close attention to those. All of these major revenues are in the general fund, with the exception of half of the home rule sales tax that we dedicate to capital. That goes into the general capital fund. Amusement tax, 9.5% of major revenues. State income tax, hotel tax, food and beverage, local use tax, the telecommunications tax, and then general building permits. So those are the ones we analyze in much more detail. Expenditure side, across all funds, $73 million. It's up $2.9 million, or about 4.2%. We break that down into 9 different categories. Salary and wages, that's about 38.3% of all expenses. That covers salaries, pensions, overtime. Benefits, 16.5%. This includes medical insurance, the village pension contributions from the village side, workers' comp insurance, Social Security and Medicare, and employer portions. Professional and technical services, 2.6% of all expenditures. This is the red light camera fees, so what we pay on the expense side to operate that program. Financial legal services, consulting, some contractual employees are included in here. Contractual services, 14.5%. This is where we see the street resurfacing program, water purchases from Jawa, water tower maintenance, auto truck maintenance, those type of things in this category. Other contractual services, 2.2% of the total. This is where we see our liability and property insurance, mosquito contract, and then some personnel training primarily. Supplies, 2.6%. This is where we see fuel, the meter exchange program, salt and auto parts. Capital, here totals 15.7%. This is where we have all the capital stuff from Section 7, the new water tower, vehicles, building improvements, all that stuff will go into more detail when we get to Section 7 of the document, or the capital section. Debt service, 1.7% of the total budget. This includes debt service on the village's only general obligation bond, and then the SSA number 2 debt service. And then other financing uses here, about 6% of overall expenditures, and this includes internal transfers and rebate programs. And again, when we get into the individual funds, we'll hit the differences and why those are moving up and down this year. Looking at personnel, just going down the far right side of the screen here. Village-wide FTEs up 7.9%. In administration, the next block down, that's up 0.55 FTEs. That includes the addition of an administrative intern, an MPA intern, that Jack will talk more about in a little bit, and then reallocating 20% of the assistant to the village administrator from streets to admin. Community development, move down a little bit. Here we see the reallocation of the assistant public works director, village engineer position, splitting it 50% from community development and 50% out of utility. Also here we added a building intern for the summer. Gets busy back there in the summer, somebody to help with phones and the counter and things like that. On the police side here, we see the additional communications operator and the increase in part-time communications operator lines. Fire department, obviously this is 6 firefighters that are partially grant funded. And then in public works here, you see the impacts of just those allocation changes in the village engineer, assistant public works director position, and then assistant to the village manager. Looking at debt, the village has 1 general obligation bond left. That's Series 2011. That expires actually December of calendar year 2022. This is the last payment. We also have the SSA debt that expires in fiscal year 21. Also, we participate, although it's not carried as village debt, it's carried as park district debt, but we also participate in the debt service for the pool. It's $390,000, and this will be the last year for that. So. Just a couple things to point out. This slide shows us anticipated balances at the end of next year. As Pat mentioned earlier, $26.5 million in the general fund. The 911 fund here, you see a negative there. That's just something I got to zero out for the next, for the final budget. That is the 911 fund just acts as a pass-through for the new jet ski. As Pat mentioned earlier, MFT, it's down $122,000. Again, we can only spend these funds on roads, so it really doesn't make sense to let them accrue. Might as well spend them as they come in. Capital improvement at $722,000. This is the one we'd like to see get up to $1 million over the next couple years. Water and sewer at $4.5 million. That's more than half of operating expenditures, so that's very strong for an enterprise fund. Even after we spent it down over the last couple of years, waiting for that JAWA rate relief to come in to fund capital. And then both pension funds, police and fire, obviously well-funded, continuing to grow, putting more money in than we're taking out at this point. And that's net assets, so that includes the market value of their investments there. Getting specifically into the general fund, revenues total $42.7 million. It's up $360,000 or about 0.9% versus last year's budget. Obviously, we are heavily reliant in the general fund on that major revenues category. It's about 71.5% of the total general fund revenues. We'll have a slide on that in a minute. Taxes, 4.1% of general fund revenues, down $658,000 or about 27.5%. Here we see the impact of adjusting the resort tax to actual for Great Wolf. And also what we did was we had a bunch of individual accounts for amusement taxes. We combined those all under one roof. Licenses and permits. I don't know if I do. Licenses and permits make up about 0.9%. It's down $80,000 or 16.9%. And here we see the impact of police and fire and traffic impact fees going down. Intergovernmental revenues account for 1.6 here. It's up $518,000. That's the SAFER grant and then another small police department grant. Charges for service makes up 16.1% of the total FY20 budget, up $371,000 or about 5.7%. Here we see the addition of the new fire cost recovery fee. It increases in contractual services for fire and dispatch. Fines and forfeitures about 4.6%. FY20 budget is up $229,000. I'm sorry, down $229,000 or 10.4%. And here we see the impact of the Grand and Hunt Club signal being, or red light camera being deactivated for at least a year, maybe longer, depending on if we have to have some additional study there. Investments and contributions account for a small 1% here. Budget increase $105,000. We see interest rates moving up. And, we recently opened a new money market account that give us some good returns versus the Illinois fund, so we expect that to keep moving in the right direction. And then other sources, small 0.2% here, and this is where we see damage to village property reimbursements and work comp reimbursements. This is a small category. On the expenditure side of the general fund, major revenues in the general fund here, so just that category split out. In total, they're up $284,000 or 0.9% over last year's budget. Again, as Pat mentioned earlier, we try to be conservative when we're looking at these, so we may still look at that sales tax number for the final, see if we can bring that down a little bit. Obviously, sales taxes, home rule sales taxes are the largest, two largest ones here, accounting for about 57% of all these revenues. Use tax, just over 3% of major revenues. This is up $175,000 or 21.3%. And here we see the impact of the legislation, not legislation, but the Supreme Court decision that resulted in Illinois legislation. Looking at amusement tax, this accounts for about 11%, and FY20 is up $539,000 or 19.2%. Part of this is the longer operating year for Six Flags. We're starting to see that experience, and then combining those amusement tax categories into one. Hotel tax, 6.8% of total major revenues. FY20 is down $1.1 million. And again, that's truing up to an actual year of Great Wolf there. Food and beverage is pretty much flat from last year. One thing we're seeing here is a little normalizing from Portillo's, kind of coming back to the mean, so to speak. So that's down just slightly, more to be conservative there than anything. And then telecommunications tax, we've seen this one going down over the last almost 10 years now. So we took this down another $80,000. Building permits, pretty much flat versus last year, but there's plenty of opportunity to exceed that, and David has assured us that he will, of course. Income tax, 10.2% here, this is up 200,000. And really, that's based on the Illinois Municipal League estimate that they put out. We take that estimate and we become a little more conservative because it always seems like they get near the end of the year and they're adjusting it back down. So a little more conservative than that. Looking at the expenditure side of the general fund, 42.6 million, up 329,000, or about 0.8%. Salaries and wages up $1 million, about 5.1% here. And you can see the additional 6 firefighters, communications operators out of there, and then COLAs and steps and things that go through natural existing positions. Benefits up 394,000, or about 3.6% here. This is the village's pension contributions to police and fire, and then some adjustments for health insurance. Obviously, you add new people, you got to assume they're going to come in and want some health insurance. Professional and technical services down 81,000, or about 5.6%. That's the red lights, and then the new ambulance, the red light expenditure side, and then the new ambulance billing contract. When we put in electronic patient reporting, we were able to renegotiate our contract there and make it a little cheaper, so that worked out well. Contractual up about 175,000, or 10%. Public Works contract increases, we see an increase in here for the new finance software maintenance. Public Works is going to replace a couple things out in vehicle maintenance, some air hoses. And then we got tree program up here a little bit for Almond Road, finish that part. Other contractual up about 25,000, 2.2%. MICA insurance here. In this version of the budget, it was MICA insurance. That came down a little bit in the final. And then we see some training for arborists and pesticide out at Public Works. Supplies, down 117,000, or 8.6%. This is where we'll see the adjustment for the salt for next year. So obviously this number will change in the final. But also one of the big variances here is 100,000 for radios that we had on a lease that we had to pay off early when we did the joint ETSB with Zion. And then other financing uses down 1.1 million. Here you see the expenditure side of that Great Wolf rebate, capital, and then a capital transfer of 200,000 that we budgeted for this year. We don't have to next year because we transferred 1.3 million. Looking at the general fund by department, obviously police and fire are the biggest. Police 42.7% of expenditures, fire 26.5%. Sorry guys. Public Works 9.9%, village-wide obligations 8.7%, administration 6.5%, and then community development 5.6%. Village-wide obligations is where you include like rebate agreements and things like that. Getting into the individual divisions now, looking at the administration division within the general fund. Total budget just over 1.7 million, up 3.2% here. I don't think I have. No, I don't. Salaries and wages are up 34,000. This is 3.3%. Includes the reallocation of 20% of that assistant to the village administrator position from streets. Benefits are up only $646, or 0.2%. This is largely due to the drop in our IMRF rate, which has been coming down over the last couple of years, offset by the assistant to the village administrator's health insurance portion. Sorry, Jack. Professional and technical is up 9,000. This is legal and audit fees. We are required to have another OPEB study this year. You have to do it every 3 years, so that's included in there. Contractual up 3.4 thousand. Here's where we see the additional munis support. Other contracted services up about $5,800. Here we added a munis conference. They have an annual conference every year for the software, and thought it would be a good idea to send one person every year to that. And then supplies just up $1,300. We had I think a laptop in here. So, and with that, I'll go. So looking at results for administration this year, and then initiatives for next year. Obviously, the financial software was a huge one for finance. Took us almost 2 years to get fully done. We are fully implemented now. We have just a couple kind of features that we want to roll out, like electronic billing for water bills, e-bills, things like that, that we're working on right now. So that was obviously a big project. And then we updated the financial policies, and we'll have some more updates for that coming here shortly too, based on some conversations we had during this process, and I'll let Ellen take the rest.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So as the board is very well aware, our East Grand activities over the last few years have sort of fallen into three categories. They've started with infrastructure, marketing and promotions, and then, of course, working with our private property owners like U-Haul, like the owner of the shopping center at Bill Plain and Grand, to try to work on facilitating private investment. So on the public side of that, while the landscaping that we've done over the last couple of years certainly isn't strictly infrastructure, I think it's a complement to our infrastructure, and it's our way of leading the way and setting an example for what we'd like the beautification of our corridor to look like. So we are in phase 2 of that. It was approved by the board last year. Due to contractor and weather issues, it didn't get planted. So this spring, prior to hopefully April or May, it will be planted in the ground. U-Haul is coming along. They, maybe not quite as fast as we would like, but they have really, I think, made still some serious progress this last year. Right now, they are at the point of, they've been clearing out debris from the 2 vacant motels that they purchased and are getting very close to interior demolition for those properties. Eventually, the plan is to incorporate those into the self-storage facility that they're planning for the existing building. They're also actually on the existing building in for final review, or at that stage of final review for permits to permanently build out the retail and rental office. So last week we heard the report from SFA that the youth sports facility is feasible. It is operationally feasible, key distinction between operations and development and financing. So that's sort of the stage that we're at. Given that it does have a positive EBITDA, albeit not a large enough one that the financing is by any stretch a slam dunk. Our next steps would be to take this back to EDC, thanks to your direction, and to begin to decide how we get to step 2. Step 2 starts to look like, I'd say, the first, sort of 3 things that are probably at the beginning of that next step. And maybe this is more appropriate in the 1920 initiatives, but we'll kind of keep, for continuity's sake, we'll keep it going. So go, no go, the next go, no go would be to get transactional control of the land, not necessarily to buy it, but just to have some control so that we could reasonably go to the development community and say that we had an option or something like that on the land. They made that pretty clear. We do need to do some conceptual land planning to see how much we could fit of mixed-use development. The mixed-use portion, the retail, the restaurant, will be very important because as there's a financing gap, that's what helps to fill it. So that becomes very important. And then thirdly, the thing that would fill that financing gap the fastest would be a corporate sponsor. So we would probably be back to the board looking at a professional form of assistance that would get us to an institutional grade pitch for a corporate sponsor, something that is up to the level of intricacy that they'd be looking for to make a decision. So back to East Grand, we certainly, our marketing and promotions kind of took 2 forms. One is just that general, spreading the message, posting on social media, allocating some dollars out of the economic development budget to run ads that the businesses find helpful. The farmers market was certainly the most prominent of that, and we launched that this past summer. We're very satisfied with the results. We're about 75% full for this coming summer already. I think the word spread. And that's exactly what we wanted to happen. Lastly, and this sort of bleeds a little bit over into next year, but the budget impact is more in this year. We've already taken care of that. We will have an update to our general economic development marketing materials. This will be a new 12 to 14 page piece that will be on the website that I'll take out. And then the part that bleeds really into next year is to augment that with some highlighting of key opportunity sites, maybe get some drone footage to show where our key opportunities are, some demographic updates, and updates to our new business handbook. So it does bleed into next year, but the majority of the budget impact has already happened. Phase 2 we talked about of sports facility. Wonder Woman Run, you may have heard about this, you may have not. Every year we seem to come up with a new event that we certainly see that those have a key role in economic development. This one is not of our doing. This one is really, I have to give credit to Visit Lake County. They brought this opportunity to us. We were in competition with Chicago. We won. And what's great about it is it really brings our big 3 partners together. There's a 5K, 10K, half marathon. They all run through Six Flags. We're the only one in Illinois. There's about 7 of these around the country, so it's not a real common. So really, the traction they're getting on social media is incredible. Our position between Milwaukee and Chicago enables them to take advantage of both of those markets. They're anticipating it maybe as many as 7,000 runners coming into town, and they happen to be mainly female. Not exclusively, all are welcome, but I think that from a shopping perspective, that's really a good thing. So good media coverage. The last issue is one that I'm very excited that we're taking a leadership position on. You've heard us talk a lot about PACE over the last couple of years and sort of how we're conveying to them the needs of our major employment centers. I think we did that in a pretty assertive way and got to the right folks and got the right messages into the right ears, and I'm really optimistic that we will be able to take a leadership role in both Tri-State and our Gurnee Mills sort of retail employment, hospitality employment centers to take advantage of the preemptive technology that exists to start to make Grand Avenue and or Washington into sort of a quasi-express route so that it would become, there's a pilot program that PACE has started to use called Arterial Regional ART. It's a faster, basically they're overriding the signals where that technology exists and you're getting from point A to point B faster. And so if we could be part of that here in Lake County, we think that has great benefits for our employment centers. So that, and then making some of our major employers aware of what PACE already offers in terms of corporate shuttles and van pools. And so taking the leadership role in our region to do that. Thank you.
Trustee Ross has a question.
If they're making it faster, then does that kind of preempt having a stop at Great Wolf?
So thank you for bringing that. I don't think it does preempt that at all. I think that would certainly be at the top priority list. In fact, if anything, it probably makes it more likely that it could happen because they're saving time elsewhere.
Okay. And then, let's see if there was one. Are you still going to keep just one day a month for the farmer's market, or are you going to?
We are. Same schedule as last year. So July through October, 3rd Saturday. It's I think, what? I'm sorry, Karen.
Sunday.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sunday. Right. Beer Fest is on Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, turning the page to the Information Systems Division, as far as the numbers for next year by the categories. Salary and wages are mostly things like cost of living and benefits and whatnot that are pretty much fixed. We did pull back on the professional and technical services amount over the previous year. We had a lot of consulting dollars in for last year, more than we could reasonably use in an effective manner. So we brought that in more realistically based on our experience. That's the $25,000 decrease you see in that area. In contractual services, there's an increase of $6,300. That's maintenance and cloud or network services. In the maintenance side, we have agreements that run out where we have prepaid maintenance, so then they bump up when we get to the end of those. There's certain things we don't distribute all the costs to the departments, we just take them inside of the division. And then the last one for the category of supplies, that includes laptops, monitors, things like that. With our workload over the last few years, we've not made investments in our own tools. And given the relative cost of all the personnel, if we can outfit everybody with some good tools, help their productivity, that's a good thing. Relatively modest increase there, $6,000 over the previous year. Looking at the results for 18-19, on the connection side, we did the joint fiber project with the high school. That completed the fiber connection that runs from Public Works past the high school, connects in at the high school, the press box, goes to the village hall, and then continues to the police station. That was something that if you would ask me a few years ago, I'd say we'd never get there, and we've accomplished that. That's been a big positive for how we can lay out our operations going forward. We have a redundancy built in for our internet connection and improved that behind the scenes and changed over how our leads connection worked, which was pretty much mandated by the state. That's for criminal history lookups and those types of things for the police department. On the data records management side, a lot of activity in the fire area for this year. changed their record management system as far as state reporting, added patient care reporting, and right now inspections is ramping up. Great job by Chief and his team on that. They had some people that really stepped up internally, took on new roles and responsibilities, and really was an excellent project from our point of view. We have identified a solution for the managed file transfer area to help control, audit, and regulate files as they go in and out, but that's still in the implementation process. We stood up a new system for tracking Julie joint underground utility locates. We had done that in sort of an ad hoc system that we used some interns for. We professionalized that a little bit, tied it tighter to our GIS system, and have it flowing into the CityWorks system, so that's all integrated together in a way it hadn't been up until now. Facilities and equipment, you recently helped us out with awarding the storage area network bid. That equipment's been delivered, it's installed, and is in the testing phase right now, so that'll be coming online. That was a good turnaround on that. That RFP was just back in January. We've changed out switches, desktops, laptops, phone sets, wireless access points, etc. But probably the biggest Houdini trick we did on the change out was for the police UPS system, where we added a second UPS, and I would equate it kind of, we kept the car going down the road, changed out the engine, and nobody noticed. Also, we're pretty much at the end of our video surveillance project. That was ongoing for a number of years. We have over, I think, 150 cameras at this point, and you really start to see the departments just use that as a resource when they're looking to determine whatever it is. Probably the strangest one I've had recently was I was able to figure out what that ComEd was here when the generator needed a little help at the village hall. Police access control, that was just recently awarded by the village board. That's a system that's been since the building was originally built, and that project is going on. We've had the project kickoff for that, may bleed a little bit into next year. And then one maybe that we didn't fully anticipate for last year was as part of the Fire Station 1 roof redo. We reworked many sins of the past, some of which predated my time here. But really great cooperation again from everybody on that. Looking at next year, we need to finish the microwave link to Zion. Beach Park's water tower has proven to be a lot of steps to get that done, but I think we're in good shape if we could ever get some good weather now. Jack has the CRM FOIA software out there. I think with the new website, we took a quarter step back on some of those, and he's ready to, we'll work together to take 2 or 3 steps forward on that. Good solutions in the hopper for that. Two-factor authentication, that's a security requirement where you have, something you know. It's something that's mandated for the police side, but we'll roll it out not only to police, but use it in other areas where appropriate to improve our security posture. Facilities and equipment, Windows 7 will go end of life next year. I was just looking at Chief Kavanaugh's laptop here, that's Windows 7. We have everything in the budget to take care of the rest of those. We've been planning for that for a long time. Thanks to your help with the budget, we've been very aggressive on doing that regular staged periodic change out, so we're in real good shape as far as the end user equipment. On the server side, we've got a little more work to do on that one. It's harder to change some of those out midstream, but that end of life is coming up as well. We'll be doing a lot of work on this new budget year for that. Police MDCs also fall into that Windows 7 category. So in the budget, there's a significant capital expenditure for not only changing out the MDCs through the ETSB, but changing out portions of the in-car video system to dovetail that so we don't have any gaps as far as that goes. Fantastic work by a lot of the people in the police department to really evaluate their needs on that, learn some things through the body camera system, and feel very positive about it. We have a trend of people moving from desktops to laptops that we had seen a number of years ago. That kind of had fallen off. You see another big push for it in this year's budget. On the police side, there's also some discussion capital dollars for supplementing the generator side of that. We have 2 UPS systems running off a single generator. SCADA has been the lonely child as far as some of the other big projects that have gone on. They've got a lot of new facilities coming online here with the water tower, receiving station, changes in the lift stations, so I think you'll see a lot more activity on their end. And then lastly, I think Jack has it in the public info section, but the video system we use for this room is exceeded its lifetime expectation. But any of those that you have questions on or in the budget numbers or anything like that, more than happy to try and give you an answer.
Good job, Christopher.
All right, thank you, Mayor and trustees. So just some update on this slide. The largest thing that we have is increasing our contractual services line item. This is the line item we use for a lot of our various software for communications, our MailChimp, SurveyMonkey, all the different things we use to communicate with residents. More and more we're starting to use these, so that explains most of the $2,500 increase. So some of the results we had for 2018, 2019, most of this is just numbers, but I just kind of want to give you guys an update on what we see on a daily basis. So our new website allows us to track visits, track what people are doing, track activity. So in 2018 alone, had 166,000 views on our website. Still the #1 most popular page is Trick or Treat Hours. So that's our, there's always a huge spike in October for visits to our website, and that's a large part of it. The other nice thing about our new website is it allows people to share directly to social media, so we can see where they're sharing different things when we put a news article. So it really just lets us know kind of what's going on. And then we also got 415 new social media followers just from the website that they can subscribe to there. In regards to social media itself, kind of a breakdown of our biggest platforms and how we're reaching people. The largest by far for us right now is Nextdoor. So we have 7,245 households on Nextdoor, which is about 37% of eligible households. That is a huge percentage compared to other communities in Illinois. Nextdoor actually, a lot of times, they'll send prospective agencies to us as a good reference of how to use it. And a lot of that, I mean, it predates me, so I can't, you know, the Village has been using it for a long time effectively. And then for Facebook, which is another one, probably our fastest growing, we're up to about 4,529 likes. This was a new page in 2016, so it's only 3 years old and it's continuing to grow. Our Twitter, we have 3,234 followers. Our subscribers for like our weekly announcements, everything, 1,500 subscribers. And then Instagram is our newest one. We're really trying to get off the ground. 173 followers. So follow us on Instagram if you don't. For the next year, Chris mentioned an upgrade to the council chamber video system. So as we mentioned, the system that records the videos, captures it, is getting older. So the last couple of years, it's been kind of something we've considered in the budget, but it hasn't made the cut just because it's still around, it's still surviving, but it's on its last legs. So we're looking at getting a brand new system. With that, we'll have higher definition, so the video will be a lot clearer, crisper. It'll be live stream capable to YouTube, so people can, at home, watch the council meetings on YouTube while they happen. And then as soon as the video is done, it'll be uploaded. So no more wait and delay for us to do all the staff time it takes to get it ready. As Chris also mentioned too, we have the launch of our new CRM FOIA software. I know we've talked about this for a couple of years, but now we're definitely ready to go. It is a large undertaking. It's not a very big financial item, but from a staff time and all of us working together, it's going to take a lot of work. So we've been waiting until we're ready. We're ready for 2020, so that's getting ready to be released soon. A new one we have too for this year is a new contract for website improvements. So what this will do is this will allow us, essentially it's a contractual service to troll through our website and find issues. So what it does is it finds if people are running across 404 errors, if they're getting lost, it lets us know that and then we can fix it. Because now we don't know unless we stumble upon it ourselves or someone reports it to us, we don't know what's wrong. And then the final thing too is mentioned, we have a new MPA management intern. We're bringing back that program. It's a 2-year internship, starts in May or June of this year. It allows us to take on another individual, have them provide a lot of help and support for us, and we think it'll be a really great improvement for public information. Questions?
Trustee Thorstensen?
Did you skip over the second to the last bullet, or did you talk about that when you did the video system earlier?
No, I did skip over that, not purposely. So it's part, but it does relate into that. So with the new system, it'll allow us for a lot better video editing. So one of the things that I want to get kind of off the ground a little bit more is more and more videos. So we've had a couple that we've done. They're pretty far and few between. Our recording software is basically an iPhone and a lavalier, so it's not very advanced of a setup. But with the new software, I think what we could do is do a lot more public education videos, going Facebook Live, or just doing like a quick demo of different things. So I kind of have some ideas on how I want to kick that off next year.
So that would include like the snippets of Chief Kavanaugh's presentation that I like so much?
Yeah. So we can include pieces of that. Some of it too is just interviewing staff members, so having a day to go talk to somebody, learn more about their job. Just more video series, because we're finding, especially in 2019, it's a really popular mode that people want to use to watch and learn. So I think it would be a good way to reach people, and in the future I envision too, going more and more towards communicating different things that way.
Contractual obligations, this is the budget where I was talking about, where we have our rebates and internal transfers here. Just total budget, 3.7 million, it's down 1.1. That's the impact of truing up the Great Wolf rebate. Other than that, other things included here are the Aquatic Center debt service. We included the reserve for economic development. That 300,000 is included in this division. And then our payments to the Convention and Visitors Bureau is in here also.
You want me to do this one?
Sure.
Okay. Municipal building, contractual services.
So this one includes like the landscaping contract,
Yes.
the building cleaning and maintenance. Sorry, Dan. It's just an increase of 300,000 here, or $300, and that's just the property insurance increase.
Okay, now moving on to the one I really
Sorry, I totally caught you off guard there. I'm sorry.
Okay, moving on to community development, planning, building safety. Biggest expense, as always, in our division is personnel. This year we saw a little bit of a shift. We replaced our chief plan reviewer with a contract employee. So therefore you see the salaries and wages at about 91% of last year, and as well as the employee benefits at an 88%, but it's offset by professional technical services. That's our contract employee being within that line item. Other items are all just support items for daily operations in the department. Some of the results for this past fiscal year, we're continuing our work on the comprehensive land use plan. We did have a consultant switch last year. So we switched firms that are helping us. We're now working with Camiros. We're making good progress. You'll see some things start going in front of the Planning and Zoning Board in the next couple of months, and then work their way back up to you. Similar to what we did with the residential building permit fees last year, I'm working on an analysis right now of updating all of our commercial building permit fees. They've last been adjusted in 2004, so it's been a while and need to have some adjustments. We're targeting on general about a 7% increase overall. So that's kind of the direction I've been given to target and working the numbers back into that matrix. Last year, we saw $68 million in new development in the village, issuing over 2,300 building permits. So while it wasn't quite as high as the year before, it's still solid numbers, and based upon when we started our new software system in 2011, we've seen significant increases. It's about double where we were, 6-7 years ago. Projects for this upcoming year, we're going to complete the comprehensive land use plan. That's identified for completion this fiscal year. We also want to update the building codes from the 2012 to the 2018 International Code Series. This was something that kind of got sidetracked with the retirement of our chief plan reviewer, followed by the departure of our village engineer. My time was split a little bit farther, so that one's taken a bit of a back burner. And then Likewise, one of the items that's on our list is to update and simplify the code enforcement regulations. Right now, we have a lot of our regulations in multiple locations in our municipal code, in our building code, in our property maintenance code. So I want to get those all consistent and in one location so that they're easier for the public to digest. Moving on to the engineering side. As Brian and Pat mentioned earlier, the village engineer position has now split between engineering and public works. So we've seen a requisite decrease in salaries and wages and employee benefits. All of the other items are pretty much status quo with support for our regular operations. And both in engineering and in building department, we are continuing on our digitizing of all of our archived documents. We've been spending around $10,000 on each side annually to take old building permits, scan them in, put them into our software system so that they're much easier to call up on an instance notice. And I think Jack can testify that digging out old plats of survey has become increasingly simpler, and we're still working our way through those. We've got a lot of documents still to scan and implement, but we are making some good progress on that. On the engineering side, some of the things that we've accomplished this year, we began construction on the Knowles Road water tower. If you haven't been out there, there's a big hole in the ground with a lot of concrete in it right now. So 2 weeks ago, they did a large-scale concrete pour. It was about 50 concrete trucks dumping concrete about as fast as they could go, and it's basically the counterbalance for the weight of the water tower. We completed our water and sewer project on Highland Avenue this year. We completed all of our resurfacing project, including the new roundabout on Almond Road. And then we began some investigative work to remedy some of the complaints that we've received over the years in Providence Village. Looking forward to this upcoming year, we're going to complete that water tower, get it in operation by the end of this calendar year, and hopefully get everything finalized on the contract by next April. And with that, the new pressure zone that's basically west of Hunt Club Road. So there's a lot of technical work that you won't see that will be done to make all that work, but and then slowly increasing the pressures on the west side of town. We've got a water main extension project on Hunt Club Road. It's a partial replacement and a partial redundancy project. It will be completed. This is kind of phase one. Phase two will be done once the right-of-way is acquired for the upcoming 2022 rebuild of Washington and Hunt Club. So the county has that on their schedule. However, they haven't acquired all of the right-of-way yet. We need some more elbow room to be able to complete our water main work. So once the county gets their right-of-way, we'll do a phase two of this water main project and get that looped in to create the full redundancy. Likewise, we're doing a water main replacement on Ferndale this year, and depending upon how the bids come in, we may be able to add in Waveland and maybe even a portion of Delaney. So we've got those all in the hopper. And then we're planning on implementing the first phase of the Providence Village drainage project. Last week, actually, we did some storm sewer televising and found a few deficiencies out there, so we're going to get those rectified, as well as we've got some low-hanging fruit that we can take care of this year. And then next year, we're planning on working with some of the adjacent property owners to the south, or the adjacent property owner to the south, to divert a lot of the off-site stormwater that currently runs through the site. We believe that's probably the biggest, the most impactful way to fix some of the drainage issues that have been problematic out there in the past.
Without disrupting the neighborhood.
Without disrupting the character and the hundreds of backyards of the neighbors. So any questions on my stuff?
When you do the Ferndale water main, is it just water main, or are we going to do stormwater and some of that stuff at the same time?
This first phase will be just water main. We will follow up in the year or two after to redo the road and fix the drainage stuff as well.
Questions from the other trustees? All right.
Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. As far as the police department goes for the upcoming fiscal year, we are 1.4% or $7,000 higher on our salaries. This is primarily due to budgetary COLA assumptions. Go on. Thanks, Brian. For the current year, a couple of the results to talk about. We did have some restructuring in the police department that went into effect early last year. We changed the deputy chief of support services to a director of support services and filled that position with John Peterson. We were also able to add one police officer to the department and assign that officer to the visitor-oriented policing team. We are continuing to look at and evaluate the firearm holster sensors. We're kind of in a holding pattern right now, waiting for some additional iterations with that system so that it will work better for what we would like. Our fraternal order police and ICOPS contracts for the patrol officers and the sergeants both expire this year at the end of the fiscal year, so we have begun our meetings and negotiations with the FOP, and our first meeting with ICOPS is in 2 weeks. We have added 4 part-time CSO positions to the department. All 4 of those part-time CSOs came from the Explorer program, so they're either still affiliated with or were previously affiliated with the Explorer program, and they're currently working part-time with the department now. We did have to shut down, or I'm sorry, excuse me, we did go online with the Washington and Route 21 red light camera this year, and we are continuing to evaluate the substation at Gurnee Mills. We will continue to look for a suitable location, and if we're not able to find a suitable location, we will look at refurbishing the current substation that the visitor-oriented policing team works out of now. Initiatives for next year, we did have a transition in the leadership team. As you know, that I am currently in the interim police chief position. Deputy Chief Gonzalez was promoted from investigations commander to the deputy chief of operations. Commander Gahn was moved from patrol commander to investigations commander. Sergeant Ward was moved from the investigations sergeant position and promoted to commander in patrol. Sergeant Bill Stashkew was moved from a patrol sergeant to the investigations sergeant. And Detective Tracy Puglisi was promoted from detective to patrol sergeant. I hope I didn't miss anybody there. There was quite a few moving places, or moving pieces, but we're doing a good job and working well with each other. Training of police personnel. We currently have 2 patrol officers that are in field training. They graduated from the police academy in November. They're currently in field training. Both are doing extremely well and appear to be on pace to complete field training sometime in mid-April. We also are currently in the process of looking for 3 additional officers through our lateral interviews program. As I mentioned, the FOP and ICOPS contracts expire at the end of this fiscal year. We have begun meeting. Hunt Club and Route 132, the red light camera in that intersection will go offline for approximately 12 months. Brian mentioned it already. That is the timeout that they have provided us. Once they have completed that intersection and all the enhancements are completed, we will go back online with that camera, and we will, sometime in the next 2 years after it goes back online, we will have to complete a traffic study to prove that it is still needed. That's the current position we're in right now with Route 41 in Delaney. They made the improvements out there. We went back online with the camera, and we're in the 2-year window right now. We should be beginning our traffic study in about May for 41 in Delaney. We have a couple of PD facility projects. Director Velkover talked about it a little bit already, but to add to that, we do have a generator exhaust project that is on tap for the coming year, and this will eliminate exhaust odors in the police department. Chris talked about the UPS generator, and we also are beginning phase 1 of our carpet replacement plan. The building is about 16 years old now, and we have a year 1 of a 5-year plan to begin replacing carpet. We also have a building automation system upgrade that will upgrade an obsolete system in the building as far as automation goes. And as mentioned already, we are currently still exploring a substation or improvements. That is it on the police side. If move to communications, thank you, Brian. The communications budget is 1.4 or $207,000 increase over the previous year. That is directly related to the budgetary COLA assumptions and the additional communications operator that we are asking for. Talk about last year's results. We did explore future partnerships, and that exploration was the department decided to go someplace else. We did get communications operators trained. We filled 3 vacancies, 1 through promotion, and hired 2 full-time positions, or I'm sorry, 1 part-time, 1 full-time positions there. And all of the operators were trained in emergency medical dispatch. For the coming year, Director Velkover touched on this a little bit. The Quad 1 and the microwave connectivity program are both carryovers from last year, and they were delayed by engineering and permitting. And so that is something that hope to get finished this year. We do also hope to continue with training, both the full-time addition and additional part-time communications operators. Looking to upgrade to the EMD software. Currently, the dispatchers use a card system that is pretty antiquated, and so we are asking for and budgeting for a software program that will be much more efficient and effective in getting information to the patients. And the last thing is to install a fully functional dispatch position in the shift leader's office. This will allow the shift leaders to plug in and assist when the center gets busy. That is all I have. Does that answer any questions?
Good job.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I'll let Trustee Ross go first.
I'll go back to the police cars, the 4 new police cars and 2 unmarked cars.
Yes, ma'am.
And are the unmarked cars replacing unmarked cars?
We will be. They will be beginning a program to replace the unmarked side of the department, the investigations vehicles.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Balmas.
Back to the red light cameras.
Yes.
Now that Washington, is there a rise in tickets? Do we have, you talked about a traffic study. Do we know, have they been effective as far as any accidents or deterring that?
Are you talking about the new intersection or overall?
New and overall.
Sure. One of the things as far as the traffic study goes, that is a requirement of the Department of Transportation. So when there's improvements made to an intersection that is covered by red light cameras, within 2 years of those improvements being made, you have to go back and do a further study to make sure that the cameras there are still warranted. We have seen an overall decrease in crashes at our red light camera intersections, but we still do have them, and we still do have some significant and injurious ones. And so, our position would be that they've been beneficial. They continue to be beneficial, and we would expect to continue to move forward with them.
I have not seen or as many complaints. Have people eased off on that, or are they still as angry about them as they've been in the past?
You know, the feedback we get typically is on the positive side. We don't hear much of negative comments in regards to the red light cameras. Most of the comments and what our officers observe out on the street is changed behavior. I think is what one of the goals of the program was, is to remind people and change their driving behaviors so that it becomes natural. And that's really the feedback that we hear most often, is they know the intersections, they know how to drive, and then that mindset carries over to every other intersection that they come up to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Garner?
My question is on red light cameras as well. By shutting down Hunt Club Road and Grand Avenue, that red light camera, do we have any idea what the revenue loss will be?
We do. It is, Brian?
Yeah, I believe we had like just over 200,000.
I believe it's just over 200,000.
Is that our busiest, it's obviously our busiest intersection, but is it the one that brings in the largest dollar amount?
I believe it is the second busiest intersection. Phil? The busiest.
It's the busiest?
Okay.
Brings in the most. And then the other one was on holster sensors. Can you just provide some details on that?
Sure, thank you. What that was, if you could recall back to that, it was an additional sensor that worked with the body-worn camera system. And what it was is a magnet type sensor that was placed inside the holster, so that if the firearm was removed from the holster, it would activate the body camera.
I see.
And so what we are seeing and what we are finding in talking to other departments that have them, that moved forward with them, is the reliability is just not where we would like it to be. There is oftentimes some flexible movement in your holster with your firearm, and that is inadvertently activating the camera. We also looked at the opportunities for that to be necessary, and the cameras activate certain ways already, or they're self-activated by the officers whenever they're on an investigative call. And so the position that we felt was most important was to continue to look at that, continue to explore it, see if improvements are made, and then move forward without purchasing them, but keeping an eye on them for the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, Trustee Bowman?
Well, just along the tasers, have they been more effective for our officers now that we've equipped them all?
Yeah, I think without question, the officers appreciate the additional tool available to them out on the street. We have had far more displays of the taser than we have deployments, which is a good thing. Oftentimes, what we see is that once the taser is displayed and the verbal commands are given, compliance is garnered, and so that's the best situation for everybody involved.
Great.
Chief, how many officers are assigned to the visitor-oriented policing unit now?
Sure. Right now there's 7, and then the hope is by the end of the upcoming fiscal year, we will have them fully staffed at 9.
Okay. And then I know Newport and Zion were dispatching for, but we did not get the other one that we had been talking to?
So we are currently dispatching for Newport Fire, Zion Police and Fire, and Beach Park Fire.
Okay.
And we did sign that contract. They came on before Zion. And the other one that was out there was a small town in northeastern Illinois.
Okay.
That ended up going someplace else.
Okay, that's the one I thought. Okay. We active.
Based on the amount of money that contract ended up being, that was not going to benefit us.
Okay. But we still have capacity, right?
We do, yes, ma'am.
Do we actively solicit communities that we think would be a good fit?
This particular one was actively solicited. It seemed like it would make some sense, considering they worked well and had a relationship with Zion. Unfortunately, it just wasn't going to benefit the village, and they went elsewhere.
Do we have any others on our radar?
We don't, not right now.
A lot of the communities have either consolidated someplace else or participating in the larger county consolidation effort. So until that county consolidated effort flushes out, they're a little hesitant to be joining a smaller.
So there's no other communities under 25,000 that are being forced into the situation? Okay. All right. Trustee Jacobs?
One more follow-up question, not to beat a dead horse with the red light cameras, but I mean, you've already mentioned it, that the goal with these reconstruction projects was to make the intersections safer. So after you do these feasibility studies, do we have any idea, based upon historical data from other villages that have done reconstruction projects, that do we know that of anything that they've lost their cameras? And
That's a good
so
question.
is there an appeal process to keep them?
Thank you. That's a really good question. I should have mentioned that. The information that we have is, yes, there is a traffic study that is required, but to date, for the intersections in the state of Illinois, in this area, that have undergone improvements that had cameras on them, at the conclusion of the traffic study, they were able to keep those cameras.
Okay.
So there isn't anybody here in this area that has lost them.
Thank you.
All right, good work.
Thank you.
You survived your first budget hearing. It's not so bad.
You made it.
Okay. Chief?
All right. Good evening, Board and Mayor. We'll start with, I think this has been mentioned a few times, there's 6 new firefighter paramedics being hired. You'll see the large increase to salaries and benefits. Brian mentioned earlier, this is offset by 75% on the revenue side through the SAFER grant. The next items, the professional services, you'll see a decrease in this. This is majorly affected by 2 areas. One is our promotional process happens every other year. That is not happening next year. And the second one is the ambulance billing service fee that we pay was cut about in half with the new efficiencies we put in place. So we were able to offset that. You'll also see in the contractual services an increase. This is as we continue to move towards more internet-based programs, cloud storage systems for a lot of our programs. We're seeing an increase there. So as far as 2018-19 budget, we kind of hit the road running this year. If you remember in 17-18, we hired a new management analyst. We went away from our traditional system of having an assistant secretary in place, and we've really gone to a project-based system. The goal there is once we complete a project, it's accomplished by reducing staff time and eliminating the ongoing process. So once Jody completes a project, there shouldn't be an administrative supporter having to do that project ongoing. So an example of that would be our new records management system with EMS and fire. Right now, administration does not take a role in that. We do an overview and high-level check and balance, but we've assigned this down to shift personnel that is handling this because the workload being automated the way we have, we've been able to reduce the administrative staff. That's how we're doing it with 2 people in administration right now. We look for every efficiency we can. We try to update it and use technology to benefit us. The next one goes right in line with that. We kind of mentioned this already, switching over to the billing company. The labor that went into this process, once again, there was, I think we were trying to do this between ourselves and finance department. During our little budget meeting, finance was spending somewhere around 16 hours a week. Fire was spending probably 20 to 30 hours a week processing bills. This all happens in the background, I think. Erica shared she probably does an hour a month to reconcile. And on our end, we're reconciling in probably 3 hours maximum. And that's definitely being, so we've cut staff time down. We're getting, the need to have administrative support in place and really allowing the shift personnel to do these tasks during their down hours. The fire cost recovery program that you approved is up and running. We've seen our first few revenues come through. Once again, this is a program when they're filling out their records management system. They're doing this right on an iPad on the scene. This information is being pushed directly through a portal to the billing company, and which case a shift battalion chief goes in, reviews it, and then hits bill, no bill. So no administrative people are once again being used by this. We're using, the people on the streets. So this is working out very well. The next item we should be receiving in the next month, probably middle of April, the new fire engine we ordered down in Florida, finding out there's a bit of a labor shortage. Everything's running a little bit behind down there. People are leaving factories to go work in higher paying jobs. We're being reassured. We're seeing this online. There's actually a site you can see and you can watch the engine being built. It is being built. It's being built well. We'll go do our inspection trip mid-April and be able to bring this home before the budget year. So we're excited about that. We were awarded the SAFER grant. We've talked about that. We are starting the first 4 of the 6 next Monday morning. They'll be on a week of days. They will then be on shift the following week. We're hoping, Christine is working as hard as she can to find us 2 more. The processing on this takes a long time to hire 6 people. I appreciate everything Christine, all the time and energy she's put into this, working along with the Civil Service Board. There's lots of checks and balances. We want to make sure we have the right candidates for the village.
Don't we have a deadline now? Don't we have a deadline, hiring deadline?
We do. They were supposed to have been hired about a week ago. I've been working with FEMA on that, exactly, whether the grant gets extended at the end or if we lose the week or 2. Right now, we're still in a pretty good window as far as that goes. The grant's not going to go away. I'm trying to extend it. They're trying to say it just goes away. I've used the government shutdown as a reason that we held off. Things are going pretty well for us, so we're doing our best with that. So I feel pretty good about our argument with them. So going into next year, we've got some other projects slated right off the get-go. We want to take our fire inspections, which right now is still in paper. We want to take that to the iPads, electronic, so we're emailing these. We're losing once again, the staff time of filing, and then once a FOIA comes in, we have to dig this paper out. Once we're looking at, reducing those administrative tasks by going electronic. We're working along with IS on this. Once again, we're using platforms that we already have in place that we feel very secure with. Christopher and his staff look over everything we do to make sure we're within compliance and from a safety standpoint. We're also, as part of this program, right now when we do our vehicle checks every day and we go out and we check everything in the vehicles, we're doing those on paper. Once again, the same programs that we already own can be done electronic. This is real important in the medication, in the ambulance world. There's narcotics. We have certain things we have to check off every day, sign that they're there, not there. With the electronic format, this is just going to make it a little more secure, a lot quicker, records to pull up. We're able to do more things along those lines. The next item we're looking for, once again, a big staff time saver, is we're looking to go to a scheduling program that will talk directly to our payroll system. Currently, we're using our email system. We built a homemade scheduling system that we've liked because it's been free for us to use. But we then have a bit of a manual process to get things into the payroll system. So Jody's out working, probably one of the big projects on her, to look for a system that'll work. It'll be a scheduler slash directly in the payroll. The issue with that is the fire service is very unique in the 24-48 shift and how FLSA works as far as what triggers overtime, what kind of days. So it's not something you just get right off the shelf. And as many fire departments there are, they still don't write major programs for this small little sector. So we're doing a lot of research. She's done site visits. She was just up in Kenosha last week looking at a program. She was pretty happy with that. Actually, one of our current companies just purchased, so we're trying to keep everything in a few different software packages so we're not learning a whole bunch of different things. But once again, the whole goal there is to reduce administrative time as we go forward. The next item, we have an ambulance in the budget to replace 1343. 2 years ago, we made the choice to hand hang on to our ambulances for 10 years. This is the first ambulance that will become 10 years old. We used to remove them at 8, and we had 4. Now we have 5, and we go 10 years. This ambulance is definitely at the end of life. This one had a little issue when we, in the last few years. It's holding on though. It's definitely time to replace it. We're seeing success in the 10-year program though, and we see this as a very viable as we go to 4 ambulances, having this 5th ambulance in a reserve role, bring it in when we're doing PMs and the other ones, important. So this is part of our regular replacement program that we have in place. The next item, last week, the village board approved purchase of some land. The next step for that is for us to start the engineering and design phase of a Fire Station 3. We have money in the budget to hire in an architectural firm to start meeting with us to put together what this is going to be. We want to make sure it's large enough that when there's opportunities, when we have floods or other things, and there could be some expansion there, we can move in there. At the same time, we do know it's a satellite station out there. We're really looking at locating these 2 ambulances more centrally located in the village. When we ran through all the data and the numbers and the mapping, we do real well getting to the first call from Station 1 to Station 2. The problem is the second and third call. That's where the delay is. We'll maintain an ALS engine in the other 2 stations, so we'll get that initial response time. But responding an ambulance from the middle location is going to speed up the second and third call. We're looking with the current staffing, the equipment that has been purchased over the years, to use jump companies there, have these 4 ambulances staffed all the time, but at the same time have our ladder truck centrally located near a large area on Route 21 as well. So we're feeling very comfortable there. So the plan there would be do the drawings the next year or 2, try to maybe let this bid early next spring so we have some costs for what the building would be to look into future budgets. So that's what we have. Any questions?
Trustee Jacobs?
Sure. I think this might have been answered last year, but the biggest concern is, in my mind, is after grant runs out, what are our future plans to keep these 6 new firefighters in the budget, as well as keeping the new station manned?
Some of the largest things that we're looking at right now, we implemented the fire cost recovery. So we're looking at a brand new revenue source we've never had in the books. We got that up and rolling. We've actually started that right now. We're moved. The other thing with going with this new ambulance billing company and automating our ambulance billing, we're seeing increased collection rates significantly, because one of the biggest things we were running into when we were in a paper format was there was a delay in submitting the bills. And when you're in the medical billing field, the first bill on the table is the one that gets paid. And as you get further and further behind, the less likely you are to be paid, or you're going to be paid a smaller percentage. So we're seeing our collection rates already increase on the ambulance billing side. And then, as pointed out earlier, we decreased how much we're paying for a fee because we automated it to the third-party company. So we're bringing additional revenues in that's going to help support these 3 positions. So that's going to offset a fair amount of it. That's kind of where we're at.
We'll have contract negotiations on the fire district too. Yes. So these costs are not in the current fire district contract, and that comes up next year, right?
Yes, that'll come up April 30th of next year, and they come in at about 28% to 30% of our budget right now. Working along with the mayor, we're looking at rolling in capital into a future budget program with them, and that's about where their call volume is, but they will be 30% of the cost of those employees and benefits, plus the new revenue sources that I spoke of earlier.
Thank you.
Excellent. All of you so far.
Jan, you want to take?
Foreign fire.
Jan, you want to take this one real quick? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss a question?
I just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Trustee Hood.
If you could, it'd be helpful to publish the improved response times based on the new fire station. I know that I'd seen that some time ago, but to really support, I mean, it's one thing to say it'll help us. It'll be, if we can say to the residents that we're going to be at your house 2 minutes earlier than we would have been, and you're brain dead after 5, this is really a good investment on our part that really helps us from a budget perspective. So I know that you have those numbers. I don't know how sure those numbers are.
Some of it, we've been holding those numbers. We worked with our GIS department to create a lot of mapping on that. Until the building was going to go there, we were kind of deciding whether to release those in case those numbers do not come to pass. So we were wanting to get far enough in the budgeting process to make sure those numbers match up with what your plans are. I just don't want to get the cart before the horse as far as releasing that data. However, I'll take direction of the board when to release those.
We don't have the whole land yet, so
That's fine. I mean,
that could
I didn't
change.
understand that. It would be also helpful if it was towards village residents. I know that the district covers, you know, Park City and other places that we would be servicing because of our contract, but to be able to say to our residents that we're paying X dollars to have a reduced response time to your home.
In looking at the numbers and running through, village residents are equally improved responses in a large portion. Large subdivisions directly across the street, where we're very excited about the proposed new response times, and that's where the land was identified. The district also sees an equal. I felt it was, when we did these numbers, it came across very equal. Both the village resident and the district residents both see greatly improved service in that area.
Thanks.
Okay, everybody. Sorry, I didn't mean to miss you. All right, foreign fire.
Foreign fire is a fee that is collected on corporations not located in the state of Illinois, so they have to pass along a portion of their insurance fee to the Foreign Fire Fund Board. This is a board made up of firefighters through election. They are restricted by village ordinance on what kind of items they can purchase with this. They've done a real good job of buying equipment in the last few years. They've actually been holding a little bit of reserve. They're excited about the potential of a Fire Station 3, and they see some of the items in Station 3 as something that they would like to participate in. So this board has kind of been holding some of their dollars back, understanding that when Station 3 opens, there will have to be some new equipment purchased in there and things like that, and they want to try to be as helpful as they can.
You have to be quick.
I got the evil look. On the street side, I'm just going to skip through this part here because I know Brian touched a bit on this at the beginning. For 2018-19 results, we're still manning snow and ice control this year strongly. We've went out for 19 events so far with 3,000 tons of salt, 34,000 gallons of liquid. We replaced 261 LED streetlights. That is a combination between us and engineering and the Capitol. We are about 80% of changing all of our streetlights owned by the village to LED. ComEd, I believe, was around 50% with their lights. They've changed as well. We replaced 99 traffic control signs in Route 7, so we have 3 routes left. That's all the routes west of Hunt Club Road we have to go through yet. We have 1,000 ash trees that were treated this year, 204 removals, and 116 trees were replanted. We had 67 storm sewer basins repaired. So our initiatives for next year is to revise our snow and ice control. We look at this every year, and we're actually talking about changing our routes again next year with our new equipment coming in. We'll continue the LED streetlight program. Hopefully we'll complete that within the next 2 budget years. Traffic control sign, we should have that also completed in the next 2 budget years. The EAB treatments and removals will continue until we eradicate the EAB, which I doubt we'll ever do. And then the storm sewer basin inspections will continue from that point. Any questions on the street side?
Aren't we happy that it's been so cold? Isn't that supposed to have
That's
cooled
supposed to
off?
help. Yeah, we'll see how that goes, though.
Okay. I'll be anxious
They're
to
burrowed
hear.
in the trees pretty good, so I doubt if they'll.
Yeah.
On the vehicle maintenance side, on the initiatives, on the results, we replaced 4 squad cars this year, 1 large plow truck, 1 one-ton truck, a pickup, and we rolled down 4 vehicles to community development. And we continue to use CFA to analyze all of our repair costs and everything. To date, some numbers that Craig gave me this morning, since 2009, we have replaced 53 vehicles out of 66 in public works, so that's 80%. We've done community development. We've replaced 10 out of 11. Those are all roll-down vehicles. Those are old squad cars. And the police department has actually rolled over most of their vehicles, except for a handful of detective cars, which we're looking at that for next year as well. For the initiatives for vehicle maintenance next year, we'll continue to replace and upgrade vehicles, the village vehicles and equipment. We'll continue using CFA as a great data for us, and we're also looking between police and public works and finance, a cost analysis right now we're looking at to either lease our vehicles versus buying them outright. We're looking in that program. I think we have our third meeting with, help me out, I can't think of the name. Enterprise, and next week to kind of give some numbers on that. So that's an initiative we're looking at for next year. Any questions on the vehicle maintenance side?
So just kind of conclude the general fund here. I just wanted to show this fund balance slide. Really what I wanted to show here is the green line there is our fund balance policy. And continuing on all the way to the right, you can see we're at 26.5 million. And I think the important thing to note here is we have been able to fund a significant amount of the capital program through surplus and transfers out of here and still keep that fund balance growing with expenditures and staying steady in the last few years here. So that's really important. Just to wrap up general fund.
Yeah, why don't we break here? So that wraps up the general fund. There's the rest of the funds that are left to go through that we'll go through at a decent clip, but there's no use to try to rush it through in 5 or 10 minutes. So I had space on the end of the new business on the regular agenda, so we can just pick it up there. So you don't have to do a motion to adjourn then.
Great presentations, everyone, especially, I know you didn't go through everything that you had in the budget book, but it was very complete, very well done. Thank you.
So a motion to continue the regular meeting.
All right, do I have a motion to continue the budget hearing until the end of new business during our regular meeting? Motion by trustee Thorstensen, second by trustee Garner. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. All right, item number 3 is a continuation of our budget workshop number 1 for the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. And I think we picked up with special funds.
Brian's going to pick us back up at the 911 fund.
All right, so now we'll get into, as Pat said, kind of the other funds here. This will move pretty quickly, and then we'll review capital. So looking at the 911 fund, as I mentioned earlier, this is just the pass-through for the new joint ETSB with the City of Zion. Fund balance is always going to stay at 0. A couple of the big things that we're looking at in here is replacing the MDCs in the squad, so that's the computers in the squads, along with that EMD software that we've talked about a couple times, and then finishing off outfitting the shift leader for a 7th full position in the communications center. Looking at the motor fuel tax fund, this is the fund that accepts motor fuel tax. We use it for the road resurfacing program. We let the balance roll over every other year. So we only utilize this every other year. Fund balance at the end of this year is expected to be about $957,000. So next year we'll spend that and what we expect to earn next year. Impact fee fund. This is the one where we transfer $200,000, $250,000 we've done in the past, $400,000 to offset the sidewalk and stormwater management program in the capital fund in 131. So this year we have $200,000 for that. Fund balance at the end of this year anticipated to be, or the beginning of next year, just over $1 million. So that'll come down to just under $1 million by the end of next year. Police restricted revenue. This fund accounts for revenues that the police get through seizures and fines that are restricted as to how they can be used. We got about $100,000 in here. No plans to use it, but at some point in the future, we could choose to use this to offset certain police capital purchases if we wanted to. Capital Improvement Fund. Total expenditures here next year, almost $6.3 million. Revenues almost 4.9. This is where we are using the surplus transfer that we anticipate transferring at the end of this year. So a deficit here of almost 1.4 million. Fund balance projection, obviously the 2.1 going in. At the end of next year, we get back to around that $720,000 range. This is the one we said over the next couple of years, look to get that back up to $1 million. And again, this is all non-water and sewer capital, or general government capital as it's referred to. The bond fund, this accounts for the debt service on the village's general obligation bond and some professional services in here in conjunction with managing that. 1.4 million anticipated to start the fiscal year. Don't anticipate that to go anywhere. Add to it slightly. Again, these bonds expire, the last payment is December of calendar year 2022. And then just to note there about the Park District bonds, not included in this fund, we pay for those out of the general fund, but just to note when they expire too. Next year, $390,000 a year, so. Special service area, this is the debt service on the bonds to extend water and sewer utilities to the Hickory Haven subdivision. Now we have 2 more years left on this. So they will expire next year. Just bond payment, property tax from that subdivision, $41,472 revenue side, and then the bond payment on the expenditure side. Golf course fund. Golf course fund here. Fund balance is about $150,000. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, we haven't had to give any money or subsidize the operations. They are fully independent and have enough cash flow to maintain operations. So no activity here. Water and sewer operating fund. So really the water and sewer system is made up of 2 funds, the water and sewer operating and then the water and sewer capital fund. Just point out total budgets here. Revenues on this side, almost 9.4 million, expenditures of almost 8.1 million. Positive budget surplus here of 1.3. You'll see how that interacts with the water and sewer capital fund on this side. And here we have revenues of just over 5 million, but expenditures of almost 7. And that's where we get that negative variance. Included in this is the Knowles Road Tower. Obviously, that's the big project. And there's about 1.7 million in other capital. And I got a slide. Next slide kind of brings all this together here. So look at combined fund balance projection at the beginning of the year, 5.2 million. As I noted before, we had budgeted deficit of 633,000 this year. That's 500,000 now that Jawa kept their rates flat, so that obviously came down. We had planned to use fund balance to keep up with capital until, as Darrell mentioned earlier, the rate drops next year and the year after. So this is a completely planned drawdown of fund balance. We put in a multi-year rate plan that calls for a 3% increase in water rates May 1st of 2019, and then one more May 1st of 2020, and then that plan expires. So then at that point, we'll revisit, we can revisit water rates. As you mentioned earlier, Jawa held their rate flat at 283. Included in the budget is 293, so that's about 126,000. Also have continuing year 2 of 5-year meter exchange program to basically change the meter reading piece, not the actual meters, but the way it's read. So we can do that, I guess, from water towers or from the desks at Village Hall here without having to send Public Works folks out. Obviously gives us a huge customer service increase with how we can get information basically on demand if anybody called in. And then the timing of the debt service for the IEPA loan, we've talked about that a few times here. And with that, I'll have Tom walk through the results and initiatives.
All right, so for the operating fund for water and sewer for 18-19 results, we're in the multi-year process of replacing fire hydrants, and to date, we are in year 3, so we have replaced 3 hydrants out of 10 this year. So we have 7 more to do this fiscal year, and then we'll continue that on a year 4 for next year. We inspected 23 water distribution mainline valves. This is an ongoing process of going through every valve in town. And if you recall, a couple years ago, we went through and exercised every valve. Now we are going back through them and replacing bushings, packing nuts, everything, and new valves that need to be replaced. So this is kind of a as-needed basis as we're going through. So even though there's only 23, we can't do that in the winter. So it's kind of a summer, fall, spring, summer, fall project. We exercised all the auxiliary valves. Those are all the valves in front of the fire hydrants. Those have all been taken care of this past year. So those are all done, looked at, checked as well. And we are completing SCADA upgrades to 4 of our lift stations, the Route 41, Merritt Club, Lee, and Osprey. And for next year, we'll continue year 4 of our replacement program for hydrants. We'll continue the water distribution mainline valve inspection. We'll continue the next 3, which will be the last 3 of our SCADA system, Martin's Westgate and Route 21. And as Brian said, we're starting year 2 of our meter Orion changeout. That'll be a big project going in for the next 5 years. So any questions on that, where we're at with that?
It's a lot of activity. Questions about water and sewage? Okay.
All right, we'll take a look at police and fire pension here. Just reminder, pension funds are funded by 3 things: employer contributions, employee contributions, and then investment earnings. Looking at the police pension fund and employer contribution here, totals $2.27 million. That's up about $65,000 or 2.9% from last year. Employee contributions about $930,000, and then investment income at $3.5 million. And then just to note that 2 years ago, we changed how we budgeted for investment income. Rather than trying to predict what the market's going to do, we budgeted at our actuarial assumption of 7%. So at any time throughout the year, we can see how we're doing against that benchmark. On the fire side, employer contribution here, $1.87 million. It's up $59,000, about 3.2%. Employees' contributions of $611,000, and then investment income at that 7% at $2.8 million. And in both contribution and net assets of $3.5 million. Questions on police and fire pension before I move? The Northeast Lake County Consolidated Emergency Telephone Systems Board. Chris gave me the nod, so I think I got them all right. This is the joint ETSB fund with the City of Zion that really accounts for everything that happens with that ETSB. A couple of the big ones in here is the generator that's going to be split between the PD budget and this budget. Actually, it's a backup generator, I believe, at the police department. The MDC replacement, the EMD software, the supervisor position, outfitting that 7th position, and then we have conservatively put together a budget that reserves about $150,000 every year for capital here. At some point, we are going to need to replace some software. And that is a major expense in the communications center, so we are planning for that and putting money away for that. Getting into capital. Capital program is funded through 3 different funds. Motor fuel tax fund we talked about, that's road resurfacing program. The capital improvement fund, the non-water and sewer capital, and then the water and sewer capital. Looking at total dollar amounts, almost $15 million, $14.9 million. Obviously, that's up this year due to the Knowles Road Tower. Water and sewer capital fund is about 46.6%. Capital improvement fund, 42%. And then the motor fuel tax fund, 11% of that. We break all that down into 5 systems. Water and sewer system, transportation system, vehicles, equipment, building improvements, and stormwater management. Obviously, the biggest one this year is water and sewer system at just almost $6.6 million or 44.1%, followed by transportation system at just over $5 million. Vehicles and equipment, just over $1.8 million. Buildings and building improvements, just over $1.2, and then stormwater management at $300,000. Digging a little deeper into each one of those systems. Total transportation system spending here, $3.3 million. Just a couple of the bigger roads: Tri-State, Data, Kingsport, Woodlake. We talked about the Grand and Hunt Club intersection. That's a big intersection improvement there. We also have included in here the East Grand enhancements that could include quiet zone that we had talked about, and obviously extending some sidewalks on the west side of the community to tie into the Rollins Savannah. Continue that project. Just a map of the streets proposed for next year. Stormwater management, I think David covered this in his presentation as well. That kind of phase 1 of that Providence Village, and then really a placeholder for any properties that might come up in the floodplain that we want to take advantage of and try to acquire. So just $300,000 budget here. Buildings and improvements. Total budget here, $1.2 million. Big ones in here, obviously, Fire Station 3. Police Department has some HVAC issues that Chief Smith had mentioned, and then that second generator. And then here at Village Hall, we also have some HVAC and get the roof done finally, after a 2-year project here, but get this roof done here. Water and sewer system, obviously the big one here, almost 6.6 million, Knowles Road Tower, Ferndale water main, as Tom had mentioned, try to get Ferndale, Waveland, maybe some of Delaney done this year, depending on how the bids come back. And then sewer lining spot repairs are also included in this budget. Vehicles and equipment, total of 1.8 million. Big ones here in the police department, 4 squads, 2 unmarked. Fire department ambulance that Chief Kavanaugh mentioned. And then in public works, 2 plows and 3 pickup trucks that are split between general capital and water and sewer capital here. Also some technology improvements and things like that included in here. And that's it for capital. Happy to answer any questions.
It's like 4 months' worth of work that you just did in 3 hours. I know, again, a tremendous amount of work goes into this budget, and then we spend so much time with advanced work, we don't do a lot of it here, but there's a lot of work, a lot of time goes into this. So first blush, because we have an opportunity to ask for changes, make changes, and then discuss it at the March 18th if we need to.
Yeah, there'll be, some numbers will change between now and the final budget. I mean, like Brian said, with the snow and ice control, the Jower rate, so there'll be some tweaks here and there. We'll bullet point those out. If you have anything you think of after tonight, obviously we still have some time to make changes, so just give us a call, let us know, and we can talk through those. Otherwise, we will plan on bringing this forward for the public hearing on April 1st before the regular village board meeting, and then have it on the regular agenda for consideration. So,
Yeah, so think about it. I mean, there's no wiggle room because we're relying on very volatile revenue sources, so it's right to the penny on everything, but this will drive what we spend next year on services, so we also don't want to make a mistake either, so.
motion to continue the regular meetings.
All right, do I have a motion to continue the budget hearing until the end of new business during our regular meeting? Motion by trustee Thorstensen, second by trustee Garner. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, and we're going to eat some pizza.